Welcome to another marvelous episode of College Football Nation, hosted by me, Lever KT, a.k.a. the Governor of College Football. And we got a lot of exciting things to talk about today. If you haven't seen the show before, we got 3 minutes. It's 10 segments. We got 3 minutes for each segment. The play clock is below us. That's who we working with. It's a 3-minute offense. And then to the right is our rundown. First things first, we want to talk about this Indiana takeover. And it's been interesting watching. Here at CFB Nation, I try to communicate this as much as possible. We are big on sticking to our guns, sticking to our takes. Whether it's a great take, we're going to tell you about it. And then if it's a terrible take, we're going to own it. We're going to have complete ownership over it. And yes, it was a bad take. So I said that to say I don't change my ideology a lot, and I'm going to talk about that a little bit later in this show. But Indiana has helped with some of this progress with my ideologies, to be 100% transparent with you. They are doing the damn thing on and off the field. 1,000% they're doing the thing on and off the field. You look at what Kirk Cignetti and company was able to do in the Rose Bowl versus Alabama. It was absolutely surprising. Like, even if you had Indiana winning, like we did pick Indiana to win, I didn't think that winning that fast. And like it almost looked like Indiana versus FCS team. And then you think about what they're doing on the field, and of course they're preparing for the next game in the Peach Bowl versus Oregon, the second time they play them this year. But look at what they're doing as it pertains to roster construction and how he has redefined their roster construction. They get a kid in Josh Hoover, who I had in my top 10 quarterbacks prior to the year, and we were able to interview him at Big 12 Media Days last year, which was really exciting. And he's going to be the heir apparent to Fernando Mendoza. And honestly, I believe that his arm talent is right there, if not better. He might even have a liver arm, and you start to look at this like a puzzle piece. It's almost like the end of the movie Friday Night Lights, where the coach is starting to take the players off the board who will no longer be there as he constructs his roster and look at what he has next year and how they can get better at it. And it's like he's already Josh Hoover and for Fernando Mendoza. All right, we're going to go get a kid that's 6'3", bona fide number one wide receiver that was in East Lansing and really underutilized just because the lack of success that they had there. And bring Nick Marsh in. He was able to do that as well. And he will replace Elijah Surratt. And then you look at, and be that bona fide numero uno wide receiver. And you look at the fact that he was, also able to get Turbo Richard from Boston College, who I think fits that system good. Roman Hemby kind of had a resurgence in the system. We saw him flash his first year at Maryland. I believe he was either as a sophomore, as a true freshman. Second year it was down. He was like 8 yards away his freshman year there from having 1,000 yards. I believe he ended up at like 992. So it's interesting to see the way that Indiana moving. And it truly has changed the scope of the way that I view roster construction. And it's crazy because a couple of years ago, I had a completely different ideology as it pertained to the transfer portal. Let's go ahead and move on to our next segment. Our next segment, we are going to discuss Brendan Sorsby going to Leavitt. I had Brendan Sorsby as the best quarterback in the portal. It's argumentative whether he was the best overall player in the portal. I know 247 Sports had him as the best quarterback. I don't believe he was the best overall player. I believe that was a kid Coleman from Penn State. And I know ESPN and their portal rankings had him as the number one overall player. And the fact that he's going to Texas Tech, to me, shows what Lubbock is really all about. They're like, hey, we have the resources here. The resources are plentiful. We hated the way that the 2024 season went, that we're able to put up all of these points. But at the same time, we struggled to stop people defensively, so he was able to get active in the defense. And you see what they're doing in the portal. We're getting a talent like Brendan Sorsby, a guy who I think is bearing more, and I had him in my top 10 quarterbacks as well heading into the season. And I'm sorry, my TV is playing in the background. I don't have the remote to shut it off, so you shouldn't be able to hear what this mic, but if you hear it, my apologies. As everybody hates Chris if you've never seen it before. And I think where Barron Morton fell short, kind of, and it wasn't really his fault. When you look at the Oregon and Texas Tech playoff game, I think Brendan Sorsby, that ability to make those off-script plays, being able to utilize his legs, because he's a true dual-threat runner, I think that's what's going to set the difference, and it's truly set the foundation that, hey, this Texas Tech thing wasn't a one-off. We believe in a conference that has been deemed as a wide-open conference. As a conference, you can look at a myriad of teams and say, hey, they have an opportunity. This past year, I looked at the Baylor roster construction. I said, hey, Baylor has an opportunity to compete in 25. It did not happen. It was swing and a miss, and the part of the reason it didn't happen is, one, their defense was terrible. It almost reminded me of watching Texas Tech in 2024 because Sawyer Robinson is just trying to play hero ball each and every game, but he can't go on defense and stop him. So, love Brendan Sorsby going to Tech. I love Texas Tech approach, and yes, they were one and done in the playoff, but that don't mean that's they're in their minds. Hey, we're going to be big dogs in this conference for a long time. Why? Because our resources are plentiful. We have a strong fan base. We have plenty of money behind us. It's interesting to see what's going to happen here in Lubbock over the next couple of days because it doesn't feel like it because so much has happened in the first 4 days of the portal, but this thing isn't over because you got teams that are in the playoff or just got out the playoff. They get an extended window because they were in the playoff. So this thing is getting really interesting. So shout out to Brendan Sorsby. Super happy for him. Can't wait to see him at Big 12 Media Days. So hopefully we get an opportunity to interview him again. I interviewed him last year at Big 12 Media Days. So this is a slam dunk for them. I think his ability to make those off-script plays is what's going to be key for Texas Tech heading into the next year and the difference in between, keeping drives alive, et cetera, and not going through it now. Let's move on to our next one. So Penn State is just I don't know. I don't know how y'all view it. I know college football is a dog-eat-dog sport. It is what it is. This sport is built on the pillars of having the ability to get better each and every year because you're going to lose a lot of talent. You lose talent via the draft or via graduation. You lose talent via the portal because people are unhappy about the depth chart or feel like that they're better than this person or some people may not want to put the work in. Oh, there's a myriad of reasons why people leave, but I look at what Penn State's doing right now, and I look and the team that they're doing to it is the team in Ames, and we're looking at Iowa State and everything that's going on at Iowa State, and I have to say to myself, yo, what's going on? My dog Kane's in the building. What's happening, Playboy? Yeah, I know you're ready. I know you're ready for that game, Playboy. Shout out to you, man. Thank you for being in here as always. But Penn State, 14+ players they took over the Iowa State team, and I started to look at it. I'm like, all right. So I know in this era of college football, the NCAA tries to stay out of things, and I don't think there's anything wrong with that. To be completely transparent with you or completely honest with you, they try their best to. This is what you guys wanted. This is what you guys going to get. Cool, but 14 players taken from your last team. Should there be a system in place where you can only take X amount of players, or should it be the Wild Wild West the way that it is now? So I have two schools of thought to this. I don't think we need help or involvement, but for me as a coach, it's not like I was fired from there. Now I want to get back. This was a progressive move. I get it, and yes, you want to build your roster and construct your roster with players that you trust, players that you know that know the system. Because once they're there, they're able to teach it the way that Caden Van Camp was able to teach it for Zach Kitley this year when Zach Kitley was hitting the recruiting trail and trying to figure things out. So with one portal window, you have one opportunity to get this right. That's just pretty much the way that this works. With one portal window, you have one opportunity to get this right. But 14 players from this team, and these are some dogs. Rocco Becht, another guy. I had in my top 10 quarterbacks last year. Heavy on Big 12 in the quarterback play in that conference. Carson Hansen, outstanding season this past year, and I believe Katron Allen is coming back. So when you look at a 1-2 punch, similar style running backs, teams are going to be tired in the fourth quarter. They also got Chase O'Well to come over there from Iowa State. It was just a plethora of players that they got to come over. Tight end Ben Brahmer also coming over. Brett Eskilston is coming over as well. And defensive backs, Jamison Patton and Marcus Neal. And like I said, 14 players in total. And like I said, it's a few schools of thought. Hey, for Penn State, is this enough? What else are you going to do to get that roster where it needs to be? Because you're going to lose some pieces via the portal. And, Penn State's, the expectation is different. It's a little bit different in Happy Valley than it is in Ames. Not saying that the expectation in Ames is low, because it wasn't. I feel like Matt Campbell made there and kind of created the new standard of football in Ames. But Penn State, they just fired a coach that had a lot of success. A lot of success at that program, yes. His record was abysmal against top 5 teams. Absolutely abysmal, but he could recruit really well. And they were going to be somewhere around 9 or 10 wins every year. And in a tough conference at that. So, got a couple of questions. And then the Iowa State, complete shambles. What happens there? Can they compete next year in the Big 12? That's the biggest question I have. So, like I said, it was just two sides of it for me. All right. Kenny Minchey flips. And this one was an interesting one. there was a lot of quarterback battles, like that first wave of quarterback battle, not quarterback battles, the first wave of quarterbacks entering the portal. I knew it would be like the Sorsbys of the world. I knew it would be like the Leavitts of the world, like those marquee guys that DJ Lagway. I will include him in that, even though he hasn't gone yet. But Kenny Minchey was a guy I was watching because last year was really strange. This past season, rather, was really strange because I heard that I think after spring camp that CJ Carr was slightly ahead of Kenny Minchey. Then there was a bunch of intel and news coming out of South Bend that, it's neck and neck, and that Kenny Minchey truly has an opportunity to be QB1 in South Bend. And so we saw him originally, commit to Nebraska, and I was trying to look at it as a glass half full. We know that Dylan Raiola is one hell of an arm talent. If he can put a season together, he can absolutely be quarterback one. Make no mistake about it. Next season. So we knew they lost a huge, guy at quarterback. We know that the resources in Lincoln are plentiful. So when they went and got Kenny Minchey, it was like, damn, do I really like this fit? Like, yes, we all like Dana Holgerson. We like what they have the ability to be, but it was some interesting things with Kenny Minchey. He had the no contact tag. That's important to me because a lot of these players, hey, I want to see who's interested. Let's get that appraisal. With Kenny Minchey, it was all about, hey, I want to go somewhere that feels like home, that I trust, and I also want the ability to play because this kid does have an immense amount of talent. Like, you look at Notre Dame's quarterbacks, Minchey could have started for a lot of teams last year. CJ Carr played phenomenally, and don't forget that Steve Angeli was on pace for an outstanding season before the injury versus Clemson, the game that I was at. I was there on the sidelines that day. So make no mistake about it. I believe that this kid has a lot of talent. So when he was going to Nebraska, I was like, all right. I like Kenny Minchey. I think it'll work out for him. I know Dana Holgerson will scheme up and get him comfortable early. I felt that 100%. But then he flips to Will Stein in Kentucky, and I have this ill feeling about Kentucky. I can't lie, and I'm going to get it off my chest. So, huge Mark Stoops fan. First things first, I'm a huge Mark Stoops fan, and I know the embarrassment of the program that was when they lost to Louisville, their in-state rival, the way that they lost to Louisville. It was embarrassing for the program. They also lost Vince Merrill this year, who's at Louisville, and he'll be a huge bonus. Hey, my dog Brian Browning in the building. What's happening, Playboy? Power to you as well, man. Hope all is well. And so you start to look at it, and I'm like, the way I feel about Sam Pittman and him, the resources not being plentiful, even the AD came out and said that, but now they're getting aggressive in the portal. Like, it frustrates me. And then to see that, with Mark Stoops, the resources weren't plentiful. They weren't willing to spend money. They were looking for a reason to fire this man, and once they got it, because what was Kentucky football like before him? Yes, you had a couple of years where Tim Couch was lightening up, but you knew that with a Mark Stoops head coach team that they were going to be physical and they were going to be competitive. Like, they beat a really good Ole Miss team last year. They were competitive with Georgia last year. But look at the roster construction this past year. It wasn't good at all. Ty Benefield visiting LSU yesterday. Did you see he signed? No, I didn't see that. So that's a hell of a sign, and I didn't see that. I did just see Jace Brown just signed to LSU. That'll be a huge get in that wide receiver room and that system that Lane Kiffin likes to run with Charlie Weiss as offensive coordinator. That will be huge. So Kenny Minchey flips. I'm wishing this guy nothing but success, and I'm hoping that in Will Stein's offense he can run it and have that similar poise that Dante Moore had this past year. But it just frustrates me that all of a sudden Lexington has found resources wherever they at the past few years where they needed to get the players to compete in the SEC, and they weren't doing it for Mark Stoops. I think they wanted them out, and I think that's clear. And I'm 100% confident in saying that. All righty, let's talk about Leavitt, Sam Leavitt, and Raiola. So I heard an interesting story about Sam Leavitt. I don't know if this is true. So these are rumors. They are, Sam Leavitt is innocent until proven guilty. But even if he's proven guilty, he's still innocent, right? So I heard a rumor that his injury was due to some type of basketball situation and that it wasn't football related. And I heard that spun into friction between him and their head coach. Don't know how true this is. This is just a theory. Nino and I was talking about it. Yeah, Kiffin is making plenty of moves at LSU already. But yeah, Nino and I was talking about it, and it was like, Dillingham, is he pissed off? And I think when you really start to look at the Arizona State last year, the writing was on the wall. Kenny Dillingham gave it to it. First day after fall camp practice, first day. He was pissed off. He was wired. He said somebody got to go, 3-9, right? Yeah, somebody got to go 6-6, and it could be us. And he said it wasn't a bad practice. They just didn't practice with passion, and I'm not sure what's happening there. But to me, I looked at Sam Leavitt as one of the guys that should have been with the first wave of quarterback signings, and it's confusing that he wasn't with the first wave of signings. So it leads me to believe that either A, Leavitt is waiting for what happens with LSU, what happens with Trinidad Chambliss. Will he be given a waiver? I don't think he's really afforded that type of time, because if Ole Miss wins again, then they play the national championship, and that's actually after the closing of the portal for players who weren't on college football playoff teams, because there's in on the 6th team. So I'm interested to see what happened to Leavitt. I thought that Leavitt to Kentucky was going to happen. That hasn't happened. Maybe that opens the door for Sam Leavitt to go to Lincoln, and they will absolutely love Sam Leavitt in Lincoln. I believe he could produce under the Dana Holgorsen offense. Just get him some weapons. Also, that leads me to Dylan Raiola. Is Dylan Raiola, and I'm asking this y'all in the chat, and if you guys not watching live stream, if you're watching this on the replay, I appreciate you. We love when people watch the VODs. Put down in the comment section, is Dylan Raiola like waiting for Oregon? Is he just like being super patient? Because we know the type of talent we have, and if you put the perfect, talent around him and the perfect system, that kid can deliver. He's really impressive. He's an impressive football player to watch. I tell you that. Why hasn't he found a home yet? So those are some of the things that are just like crossing my mind. And watch, after I end this episode, we'll get a leak that both of these guys got assigned there. But those are the things that are crossing my mind. Sam Leavitt, Dylan Raiola, what's going on? I know it's still early in the process. It just opened up 4 days ago, but I expected them to go with the first wave of quarterbacks because I think that highly of them. All right, let's move on to the next segment. Pete Golden, I'm telling you, he's brought a new era swag to Oxford. He really has, and it's always interesting to me when you see how different coaches approach different situations. And Pete Golden has this poise about him. He's aggressive. He's forward thinking. When they made a big play, they'll go dunk on the sidelines. He's like, nah, let's just get a big play chain. They put on the big play chain, and his ideology. Raiola should start looking at G5 schools. I don't think any Power 4 schools. Wow. That's a hell of a take by Brian. Brian is saying that he don't think any Power 4 schools will really want Raiola. And how long will this injury bleed until, spring? He probably won't play spring camp, but he should be ready for fall camp, I would imagine, right? That's a question I got for everybody. But Pete Golding has done an outstanding job in these 2 playoff games. To be down, what were they down, 10 or 11? And this past game versus Georgia, the poise that they played with, newsflash, Ole Miss can win it all. And I know Indiana has looked impressive. I'm not just going to say Indiana's just going to go there and beat, Oregon, for the second time this season. It will be a hard-fought match. It won't be like that Alabama game. I can promise you that. But if you think because the U and Miami is red hot, Miami has been playing outstanding. If you didn't see it, me and Jalen predicted on College Football Showdown that Miami will win. But the thing about Ole Miss that Ole Miss has the ability to do, and I've seen it with elite defenses this year, they have the ability to make them tired because they go at a speed, and sometimes it don't show on television, but when you see what weeks a stud linebacker throwing up on the sideline, that's the tempo that they play with. They play with an outstanding tempo. But Pete Golden has brought a new era here. I really want to get to my point with how in the hell was he able to retain Kewan Lacy? How was he able to do that? Because it was almost, in my mind, a foregone conclusion that Kewan Lacy and Lane Kiffin are like this, so he's 100% going to LSU with Lane Kiffin. Depends on how bad the injury is. Sometimes those small injuries keep coming back. That's a good point. But yeah, Kewan Lacy is retained, and they're already making moves in the portal. They was able to get my dog Keaton Thomas from Baylor. Yes, on a bad defense, but he's a bright spot on a bad defense, just like Rodriguez was for Texas Tech back in 24. The things that this guy is able to do is impressive. Also got cornerback Jay Crawford, who transferred over from Auburn. Defensive back Sharif Denson, who transferred over from Florida. And Trinidad Chambliss should be awarded an extra year, just because. And they sent all of the 30 pages or maybe 300 pages of medical records to the NCAA. And I think if he does decide to come back, it'll be in Oxford. But I think he got to strike it when the iron's hot. This quarterback class is weak. And I mean, last week, in my opinion, I saw a tweet from somebody I really respect. And I think it was both sides. They said we may not see more than 3 quarterbacks drafted in the first 3 rounds. And hey, that's who I trust as my draft guy. So if he said it, to me, it's gold. So great job for Pete Golden. I love to see what he's doing. And that Pete Golden is adding a different dimension and a different swagger to this Ole Miss team. And for those of y'all who thought that they weren't going to be successful with this guy, you were wrong. All right, I want to do like a editorial piece. I always did this on Governor of College Football, which is a longer show. This is just a 30-minute show, and I'm going to start doing that soon. I'm not sure when, because I got grand ideas this offseason, and there's some documentaries I want to do on the sport of college football. So I'm excited for those. So roster construction, I said a little bit in the opening. I said it earlier when we were talking about the Indiana segment and how much Ole Miss should be poised to make a good run next season, retaining good players at an early grade. Yes. I share those same sentiments, Brian. He's doing an outstanding job. Like, he's already, to me, exceeding expectations, and it's so early in his tenure. He's already, and they've already shown the resiliency being down versus Georgia. So, yes, he's exceeding expectations. And people love him. Like, when I saw that the players were genuinely happy for him when he was named the head coach, like, it looked like genuine love. I couldn't tell if it was fake or staged love, but it looked like genuine love, and you could just tell it now. So let me get back to my ideology on roster construction and how much it has changed quite a bit. Over the last year, honestly, there was a time where I viewed the transfer portal like a light NFL free agency. Hey, your roster should be built and constructed of about 85% of players through high school and 15% plug and play. Hey, we have a weakness here, and there's a stud like a guy a couple of years ago in East Lansing by the name of Keon Coleman that we can plug and play. Plug and play. You know, you need somebody on the back end. You need a nickel corner because, you got guys that can play on the boundary, but you need somebody that can play in the slot, right? That's how you construct your roster. That was at least my ideology. But here's where the changes come. This past season, when we looked at teams with high return in production, Clemson and Penn State, Clemson was at the top of the list. And I believe Penn State was in the top 10 of return in production, and both of them lackluster seasons, underperforming seasons, awful seasons, right? And don't forget, this is Shameless Plug, Overreaction Monday. On a Tuesday, we will be live tonight at 8:15 p.m. We're going to preview these playoff matchups and make sure you guys don't want to miss that. It's going to be an outstanding show. You guys know how we like to mix the cast. Tonight it will be me, Nino, and Moon. So it's going to be an outstanding show. We're going to preview that playoff, and then Nino's going to give us the best guy in portal news in the business. He's going to give everyone an update on the portal. But it's funny how that has changed. And Brian, honestly, that's how I used to think, like 85%. But now I don't see it that way. To me now, it because I thought that the 85% means you were a transformational coach. It wasn't transactional. Hey, I'm going to get these kids in high school. They may not play a lot year one, like a Gideon Davidson. I'm not sure if you enter the portal. But by year 2 and 3, I'm going to have them ready for the NFL. That's how I viewed it. I don't view it that way anymore. Because you look at a team like Indiana, that is a portal-based team. 100% a portal-based team. They're like at 68% portal, 32% out of high school. And that number may lower next year because they've got a great portal so far this season. So to me, it's like, yes, these movements, like what's going on in Lubbock and what's going on in Bloomington, can be viewed as transactional because in theory they are transactional. But when you have laser focus, when you have player-led accountability, when you have coach-led accountability, and you are able to have those difficult discussions that you need to have, to me, that means that you're transformational coaching. Yes, it's transactional in theory because you're going in the portal and you're spending a lot of money, but it's transformational because you're actually getting output from what you got. To me, that's super important. So my ideology has shifted a little bit on roster construction. So I'll be comfortable with a 7-30 now. If it's a 65-35, these players go from out of bounds, so they turn the team that is going to fight there. Yep, I agree with that 100%. So yeah, it's incredible what we're seeing. And I put a G6 outlook in here. This is more so conference-based, what it looks like, what do we expect. Got a few notes on here I want to talk about, and I'm sure Brian's going to add to this conversation. That's what I love about this show, that I love interrupting my show to see what's going on in the chat. And I'm sure Brian's going to put some tidbit in there for us. So G6 outlook next year. We got the new Pac-12, which in my opinion will be the class of the group. I did predict the American being the class of the G5 this past season, and 100% correct. American was beautiful. The strength of schedule that some of those teams had to play was pretty damn well. And the American, and the reason I say Pac-12 will be the class of the group, we got Boise State, Oregon State, and Washington State, Colorado State, San Diego State. We got teams that are going to be competing against each other. I think that strength of schedule that you're going to see in the Pac-12 is going to be hard to beat that at the G5 level. It really is, because you're going to play some dogs. Once you get into your core conference schedule, week in and week out, you're going to really play some dogs. So I think that the new Pac-12, whatever they call themselves, whenever they go by, the new Pacific Conference will be the class of the group of 6 conferences. The American lost so much. They lost players, coaches, staffers. How do they rebound? Right? But I still have them second because a lot of those programs, and mind you, there's no conference that we're more closer with here at CFB Nation than the American. So I do believe in a lot of the coaches there that are at least still there and building up these schools. But to me, there's a huge gap in between where the Pac is going to be at and then where the American is. And then you have the Mountain West where they lost so many of their good teams. They do have Northern Illinois coming. But I think UNLV will be the class of that conference, and I think they pretty much dominate. Oh, hey, I appreciate that, Brian. Absolutely. Basketball speaking, the Pac conference is the top G5 conference. They'll compete against any most powerful conference. I agree with that. Like, I think when you look at the Pac from a basketball standpoint, like, I think them in the Big East, that could be a discussion that, hey, we're just as good as the Big East when you think about it, because it ain't the whole Big East, you know what I'm saying? But, yeah, 100%. So, Mountain West, I have third. And then the rest, you have the MAC, which is just the MAC. The MAC, if you're a purist, you love the MAC, just because, like, this year, there was a point in time, me and Moon were looking at it. Everybody was even like, what's it like 5-3, 4-4, or 3-4. That was the conference. Like, everybody was literally like that. That's what they were, right? And that's what you get with the MAC. Con USA, they got a bunch of newer schools. Liberty was a huge disappointment this past season. Not sure what happened. Had the easiest schedule in the country and fumbled. Sunbelt. What does the Sunbelt look like this upcoming season? Like, I think, we got a team like JMU. Billy Napier is there. We know he's going to hit the portal and get active and construct the roster in a way that it needs to be constructed. And then also Jacksonville State, out of Conference USA. What do they look like? And the Miami of Ohio seem to always be there. But I think when you're looking at the class of the G6, it certainly starts and ends with the Pac. The team who probably wins that conference will definitely be that G5 slated team for sure. So, I got my way too early top 5. I'm super excited about this. Of course, it's way too early. And maybe some of this is me being a prisoner of the moment. You know what I'm saying? I'm not sure. You guys let me know. My dog Brian gonna always keep me humble. You know what I'm saying? So let me know. But this is my way too early top 25 heading into 2026. This is based on performance this year, the ability to recruit, and ability to get active in a portal. I have Georgia at number 5. I have Ole Miss at number 4 because I believe if Trinidad Chambliss is allowed another year of college, he's coming back to Oxford. Retaining Kewan Lacy is going to be crazy. They're already going crazy in the portal, bro. Watch out for Ole Miss. I got Oregon at number 3, Ohio State at number 2, and Indiana at number 1. Those are my top 5 teams heading into 2026. Georgia's going to always be in the mix because Kirby Smart, the skull sessions. I get weary about Georgia during the offseason because the players have a little bit more freedom than they typically have, and we get to see some idiotic stuff. But I think Georgia's a team that I think we need to really start watching here in the portal and see how they move. But they're another transformational school who prefers the recruits out of high school and then plug and play pieces from the portal. So that'll be interesting. Ole Miss, I just talked about them a great deal. My belief in Pete Golden, like when he was hired, we have this. Me and Jalen had this thing with Pete Golden, but before he was hired, it was like, oh man, like you know what I'm saying? It's too late. Gonna give him a run, but now it's here. It's through the roof. This guy, he's ready for the moment. He's born for the moment. Super excited for him. And then Oregon, Dan Lannon and company is always going to be there. I'm interested to see what happens with Dante Moore. And then I think once Dante Moore either announces that he's coming back or going to the NFL draft. That's when we'll see them move and make a move. And they can absolutely win it this year. And Ohio State is going to come back with a fury next year. They get Chris Henry, God bless the dead, his son, C.J. Henry, is joining them. And that wide receiver core just gets richer. And Jeremiah Smith is, that'll be his last year in Columbus because, of course, he's going to the 2027 NFL draft. And in Indiana, they just keep getting better. You thought Fernando Mendoza had an amazing season. Wait till you see Josh Hoover in Bloomington with a receiver like Nick Marsh. And that's no disrespect to Elijah Surratt. Huge Elijah Surratt fan. I got to see him in person at JMU quite a few times. But I'm telling you, this Nick Marsh kid, I seen him in person at Maryland. Every bit of 6'3", and he's real deal. In the game that they came back against Maryland. All right? Yes. I agree with you. UCLA is getting active. UCLA is getting active 100%, so I like that. So this is our mailbag session that we about to go to now. You got anything on your mind we can talk about it? Now, other than that, we can get up out of here. Also live tonight, don't forget, make sure you guys are back, 8:15 p.m. Eastern Standard Time for Reaction Monday on a Tuesday. That's a show we're trying to do 2 times a week, every week moving forward, and then I'm doing this show 3 times a week. And then once I get everything back in the high gear for Governor College Football, I'll be doing that back like 4 times a week, so. It's interesting. We got you for this offseason. Make sure you follow us on Twitter at THECFB Nation. Make sure you follow, the website. Put it in your favorites. Moon does an outstanding job with the website. That's THECFBNation.com. Make sure you guys bookmark that in your favorites. Every day I got this thing that I do when I wake up. Go to CFBNation.com, see what's going on there. And I go to the Twitter because I know the latest news, anything that's going on with college football. Like, I have a couple of people notifications. It's like CFB Nation, Pete Nakos, Pete Thamel, and I get all the news that I need. So, let me see. Hey, I appreciate it, Brian. I appreciate you you always being here too, brother. Always appreciate the commentary. You're legit, man. As I always like to say, there are no more victories in the sport that survive and advance. That's why college football has the greatest regular season. Until next time, you all take care.